Welcome to our Xavierites, our monthly series highlighting Xavierites from the DMV alumni area. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you'll be aware of all of the DMV Alumni Chapter's newest uploads.
Thank you for taking this time with me, Reggie.
No problem.
Okay. Uh, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to get started. I thank you for participating in the Our Xavierites interviews so that we can kind of get to know more about our alumni. And I'd like for you to start, please, by just telling us a bit about yourself, your name, where you're from, your high school.
Okay, so I'm Reginald Salter. I'm from Dawson, Georgia, which is a very, very small town in Southwest Georgia. I'm in that pocket between Alabama and Florida, where Alabama and Florida meets Georgia. So typically, if you're from anywhere in Georgia outside of Atlanta, you kind of don't count.
Okay, because I really don't know much in Georgia outside of Savannah and Atlanta. Oh, Dawson. Okay, Dawson.
Dawson, Georgia. So that's close to Plains, Georgia, where former President Jimmy Carter is from. So it's in that area. It's in the peanut cotton area of Georgia. So a lot of agriculture in that area. And I attended a small high school, Terrell County High School. There were 63 of us in my class, graduated. That's
63.
63, and that's about the average size of the class there. So small rural town.
Okay. And what was your Xavier class and what was your major there?
My major was biology. I was biology pre-med at Xavier.
Okay. And what year did you
finish? 95.
Class of 19. Is it 19 in front?
Listen,
don't be in your feelings. It's a 19 in front of mine too. I was like, shout out to the 19. We gotta represent, Reggie. We gotta represent.
1995. Absolutely. This is my 25th anniversary.
This is your 25th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So can you tell me why you chose an HBCU?
Ooh, you know what? So this is kind of like a therapy session at this point because
let's get into it.
Coming from the town I came from at that time, there really wasn't much guidance when it came to college or what have you. The teachers, the counselor, they really, I think, pushed, if you will, the colleges that were close to our small town. So we were, there's Georgia Southwestern, which is less than an hour away, Albany State, which is less than an hour away. There were other smaller two-year colleges. There was Fort Valley State, which was about an hour away. So I really didn't know, I didn't have a concept of what HBCU was. I had no idea that there were colleges that were started for that particular purpose at that time, because it really wasn't that guidance there. One thing I knew at that age was I wanted to get away from home. I felt like there was a lot of world that I had not seen. Mm-hmm. The furthest away from home I had been was Atlanta, which was a 3-hour drive from my hometown. So I wanted to get away from home, not necessarily from the state. My first school that I looked at was Savannah State, and that was because they were writing me. So I said, okay, I'll go to Savannah, west coast of east coast of Georgia, close to the water, etc. And then one of my classmates at the time started looking at Savannah. I don't think it was because I was looking at Savannah, it just happened. So I said, no, I don't want to be around anyone from my hometown. I wanted to get away and really grow up. So then I became really intrigued with Morehouse and Duke. Duke was extremely expensive. I didn't know what tuition was. Again, the counselors never sat us down and said, you actually have to pay for this. So I didn't know all of this. Mm-hmm. Of course, I idolized Martin Luther King. So I was like, I'm going to Morehouse. Still didn't have a concept of what HBCU meant. I was pretty sure I was going to go to Morehouse. They offered me a significant amount of money at the time. And then one night we were watching The Cosby Show. And Bill Cosby had on a Xavier sweatshirt. And I was like, I like that sweatshirt. And I was like, the name was unique. So I looked up we didn't have computers back then. So I looked up the university in the encyclopedia. And of course, naive me, I started reading about Xavier in Ohio. So I wrote the school. Yes, we wrote schools back then. They started to write me back. And then that's when I really started to learn the concept of HBCU because Bill Cosby, what was the show after that? A Different World.
A Different World, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I started reading about how Bill Cosby would wear HBCU sweatshirts, whatever. So I'm like, so clearly this is not this school. And that's when I went back to the encyclopedia, found out about Xavier, wrote Xavier. Xavier started writing me back. Dr. Carmichael, he was the pre-med advisor at the time. What really got me was he sent a Xavier shirt and all of this information about what the pre-med office does. At the time, Xavier was number 2 for sending African Americans to medical school. So I was intrigued by that. And plus, you know, being young at that age, you feel like somebody want you back. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to Xavier, going to New Orleans. So yeah, that was how that happened inadvertently. So, you know, because I call it a therapy session, but because of that, I really spend a lot of time now trying to help students really understand what's out there. What's your option? What are we looking at? What does tuition mean? What is a HBCU? What is a private school? What is a state school? Those were things I just didn't have.
Right.
It worked out in my favor.
No, it super worked out in your favor because you chose the right school.
I absolutely did.
You chose the right school. And so I was going to ask you if you were a legacy or anything like that, but you had absolutely no idea.
No idea. No idea. I just wanted to get away from home. Like I said, I was intrigued by everything I was seeing in the mail from Xavier. I thought, you know, the marketing back then was excellent, given we didn't have computers and all this stuff. And yeah, New Orleans, you know, I'm like, okay, here's a new city, you know, all the fanfare of New Orleans. I didn't even know what Mardi Gras was. That's how green I did not know what Mardi Gras was.
But you were close to Alabama. They have a huge
I'd never been out of the state of Georgia at that age.
Oh, okay.
I was from a small rural town, never been out. And, you know, and back then, well, it still does say like New Orleans was like Paris in the US. So in my mind, you know, this was my escape. I'm traveling. So, yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. So, you know, Paris of the US. I can see that. I guess a little bit.
A little bit.
The architecture, maybe.
Yeah.
So the architecture. But so what I've noticed, like right now with everything that's been going on, because 2020 has been quite the year, right? Yeah. But there's been a lot of renewed discourse about the importance of HBCUs and the relevance of HBCUs in the 21st century. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to see it, but you know, that cynical side of me starts to say, okay, where have you people been? I mean, have you been, you know, in that small town that I came from? Have you been under a rock? And, you know, I personally think that because more opportunities opened up at PWIs, then, you know, people start to lose sight of the significance of HBCUs. And HBCUs have to do a extra hard job at saying, listen, this is the product that we produce. You know, these are the number of PhDs we're putting out. These are the number of MDs, DDS, or whatever, counselors, educators. We have to constantly remind the world of our significance. And I think that for our race, I think that because we had opportunities elsewhere, it was like, okay, the opportunities are here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to send your child or you even have to attend the HBCU, but don't lose sight of the significance of HBCUs to this country. Because it's like losing sight of the people who built the country. You know, we have to constantly remind other cultures how the White House was actually built from free labor, you know. And so when you start looking at the intellectual property of the United States, a great bulk of that came from HBCUs and are still coming from HBCUs. When I got ready to go off I chose to go into dentistry. When I got off to go to dental school, because of my experience, I made the conscious decision that I wanted to continue at an HBCU. So I ended up going to Howard.
Okay. So we're going to definitely talk about that too. I am definitely going to ask you about that. I wanted to ask like more about your time when you were at Xavier though. So you get there, you're young whippersnapper. So if you finished in 95, so you got there, what, 90, 91, something like that,
I
91?
started in 90. I
You
started
started
in
in 90.
Mhm.
Okay, so tell me, as you just getting on the campus in 1990, how did you find your group of people? How did you find your community, your tribe, or whatever? What was that like?
That was my actual tribe. That was a long process because I was very shy.
Okay.
I was very self-conscious because I had a Southern country twang. You know, there's a difference between sounding Southern and sounding country. So I had no sense of style or fashion, if you will. So I was just very awkward, and I was nerdy on top of that. So
But you were in an environment with a bunch of nerds, right? Or is that what Xavier is? Just a bunch of nerds?
well, that's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Xavier is an environment of a bunch of very smart kids. But I was like the nerdy type where, like, I remember that first weekend when they had an all-nighter. I didn't know what an all-nighter was. And so, you know, people were like, oh, you know, you go and you party all night. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I have chemistry class on Monday morning. So, so my roommate was from LA, and you know, he was getting dressed, and, you know, he was all sharp, and he's like, Reg, you can't come hang out just a little bit. I was like, man, I have chemistry class 8 o'clock on Monday morning.
Oh my
It's
God.
Saturday. I am going to be here preparing myself, studying, whatever, you know.
So you know, most people don't set 8 a.m. courses for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's not how it works.
I can't even
You probably had a
explain.
12 o'clock class too instead of being on. Did you have a 12 o'clock class too instead of being out on the yard?
My first year, so because I was pre-med, we had bio lecture, and then you have a lab, which is long. Then you have chemistry lecture and chemistry lab. So the labs were long. So pre-med majors very rarely had the luxury of other majors. We didn't have that yard time until you progressed into the
They
you know, the
probably
upper
set y'all up
classes.
like
Yeah.
that on purpose. They listen. They did right. They did the right thing, Reggie.
They did the right thing. They did the right
thing.
thing because once I figured out what the yard was, that's when I started to blossom.
Okay.
Yeah, but so most of my tribe started out as being people that I would study with. Then, you know, you would study with people, but may not necessarily have much in common socially. I did meet my very best friend in the world my first year. We're still, you know, we're the greatest friends now. We both were biology pre-med majors, so we would do a lot of things socially or what have you. But I didn't really meet my tribe until my second year, when I moved in with two guys. You know, Sebastian, who was in our DMV club. He recently moved away, and Corey's in Atlanta now. And that's when my tribe really started to grow, because then, you know, we would have mutual friends. We lived in an apartment off campus. People would come over, and I started to really grow socially as a young man. So, you know, I always say I really blossom or grew at Xavier.
I just knowing you now, I would never have thought that you were shy.
This is what I'm talking about.
I would never have thought that you were shy because you're
Yeah.
just so outgoing. That's just
I
not
didn't,
you
my
at all.
first year, I did nothing. I didn't participate in anything. My second year, I got involved with campus ministry. And of course, I met, you know, people there that we're still good friends. But I really didn't really start to grow until like the end of my second year. And that's when I started getting active in student government with Max, you know.
So
So,
now
hey,
I was going to ask you about your extracurriculars. So you named campus ministry. Now a lot of people are afraid to join that. I know now because people were scared, like, oh, but I'm not Catholic,
yeah,
and so I can't be involved in campus ministry. And it really
yeah.
wasn't like that. Can you tell me a bit about your extracurriculars and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, campus ministry for me, it was a social outlet. Like my after I moved out with Brian and Corey, I moved in with Terrence, and Terrence was in the choir. So it started with me, like we would go hang out. He would go to choir practice, so I would meet him after choir practice so we can go study. And then, you know, other people who were in the choir, you know, would come study with us, or we would go get something to eat or whatever. So the you know, I became a part of that family. I knew I couldn't sing, so I wasn't going to be in the choir. So I started doing other things in campus ministry. And then, you know, some people who were not Catholic, and I wasn't Catholic either, we would go to Greater St. Stephen's for church. So I learned about that. Yeah, so we would meet in the cafeteria, get our breakfast, get on the bus, go to Greater St. Stephen's, have dinner afterwards. So, again, my tribe started to grow from there. Max was the best. Miss Jasper, a lot of the kids know her now as Miss Alcorn. Dean Bird, Miss Bonner, Gabrielle Bonner was there when we were in Max. So Max was just the best because I started doing a lot of volunteer work.
Tell me what Max was now.
Mobilization at Xavier.
Mobilization at Xavier. And they still have that, don't they?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. So it was a big structured way of doing community service. We would go over to Gert Town for cleanup. We would spend time with the kids over there, just doing like Saturday playtime activities. That was a pool over there at the time. The pool is gone now. They have the tennis courts over there now. So we would go clean up the pool. I got really involved in elementary tutoring with a young group of elementary males, because I realized once I started getting mentorship from Dean Bird, I started realizing at an early age what it means to have someone, with a bit more experience in education, which should really have an influence on your life. So I started really, really working with the elementary mentoring program for those young boys, and that turned out to be the greatest thing because, their parents really valued it. So they would invite me over to dinner, and I learned that on Mondays you have red beans and rice.
That's true.
There was certain meals that you had on certain days, and I really got a real feel for that New Orleans cuisine, because you had it home cooked. And so like every weekend I was never without food because those families in New Orleans.
Isn't that wonderful? You know what I learned about when I was there? Oyster dressing. Listen. Do not like, to this day, do not like oysters. I'll eat them two ways. They either char grill. I'll eat char grilled oysters, or if somebody makes some oyster. I got to tell you, I went to, after church one day, we went, you would go to somebody's house and eat. They would make a meal for the college students, so they would take care of you. So I went to this lady's house, and I wish I could think of her name right now, but I can't. And she had some oyster dressing. I was like, oh, well, I don't like oysters. She said, well, baby, just taste it, and if you don't like it, don't keep eating it. Okay. Dude, when I tell you that oyster dressing was so good, I would have licked the pan. I went back for more, and it was gone. If somebody did lick the pan, I think. I don't know. It was just, the sides was all scraped. There wasn't a crumb to be found of that oyster.
We call it in Georgia, you have to take your bread and sop it up.
Listen, it was amazing. It was amazing. So listen, that people taking care of you after, they did us college students right.
I'm telling you, like that home feeling, that people welcoming you to their city and being proud that you were there to get an education, that you were away from your family. New Orleans was like no other, in my opinion. I mean, they really looked after you. And, there were sometimes like families would call and check on me. And I'm, when I started getting my free spirit mode, I didn't want to be checked on, but that was just the love there, I just, I think a lot of people say after Katrina, after a lot of people moved away, it's not there as much. I don't know if I necessarily believe it. I'm not there to know, but that will always be the memory I have of New Orleans in my heart,
Now, I wanted to ask you, I was going to ask you about a favorite memory or a funny memory. So you told me a few of your favorites, but tell me something funny. You had something funny that happened to you at Xavier? I was trying to think of something funny too, and I really can't think of anything like funny, but I can think of favorite memories.
Can't think of anything funny.
I can't think of anything. If I was to think of something funny now, you know what? Probably back then it wouldn't be funny, like Crazy Roommates or something like that. That stuff was not funny at the time.
You're right.
It's funny now, 20 plus years later, because at the time I was not with it. I was not feeling it, but funny now. But not funny.
I'll tell you this story. Okay, and this definitely was not funny then. So my senior year, I may have shared this story with you. My senior year, we had a flood, and I missed a quiz in histology. I wasn't doing too well in histology. So that quiz was a make me or break me quiz. Like if I did well on that quiz, I had enough points to push me over the mark.
Okay.
So we had a flood. Graduation was coming. My parents, everybody, they rented a van. Whole family was coming, and I was in my house going berserk. In our house, we stayed on the second level. We were looking out the window of the second level with my roommates and my roommate's car was completely covered with water.
Oh wow, yeah.
They had boats and they were like going down the street in boats. And in my young, self-centered mind, I had to get to Xavier to take that quiz so I can graduate. Not stopping to think, well, who the heck do you think is at Xavier in the middle of But I did not want it to be.
Because they got in the boat and went to Xavier, right? So they could give you this quiz.
Exactly. Because I'm like, people are out in the flood water in their little boats. So I'm thinking, so.
Sir.
Hey, and I'll never forget, this is one of the things I love so much about Xavier. And Sister Maureen was my professor. Sister Maureen saw one of my classmates, Dr. Ida Rose, told Ida to let me know that it was going to be storming, there was going to be heavy rain. I was supposed to meet with her the next day, tell me, don't worry about coming out, be safe. Okay, I didn't have a cell phone at that time, so
did anybody have a cell phone at that time?
Can't remember. I'm trying to think back. I don't think we did.
I don't think we had them like that in 95. I mean, they had them, but they was probably still large.
Yeah, and email was still not, the thing of the time. It was coming, it was starting at that time. And Ida had no way of really getting this message to me. So, she went through her phone tree of friends and all those connections till finally someone said, this is Reggie and Terrence's home phone number. And Ida called me and was like, hey, Sister Maureen told me to tell you yesterday. But I was trying to get in that boat and go to Xavier, man.
Sure. In the middle, because it wasn't I remember that. I remember you telling me the story too, but it wasn't it was a tropical storm. Mm-hmm. And the streets were flooded. I remember that because that was I don't even remember, it was 95. Mm-hmm. So I remember, and because I finished in 98. So
1998.
1998. Put some respect on that 19 now. So yeah, that was 1998. But I remember that flood. It was a bad tropical storm. That's funny though. Yeah, they wasn't finna be there for you.
No, they were. But that, is funny now that I think about it, just my mindset there. But that to me again was like my memory of New Orleans. That's the essence of Xavier, that a professor would recognize who she saw me talking to on a regular and would go to that person to get that message to me. And, that just shows that she cared. And
that's fantastic.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I remember I didn't get a chance to take the quiz prior to the exam. And Sister Maureen and Sister Grace Mary was the chair of the department. They still allowed me to march. The whole idea was I would come back after graduation week, take the quiz, and we will see what your grade is. Of course, when you march, you didn't get your diploma. They told me you'll get a cover. And they were like, but and I remember vividly, Sister Grace Mary said, well, your parents are not going to look in the cover anyway. They just want to see you walk across that stage. And she's like, and I trust that you're going to study for this quiz. And she scolded me because she's like, you shouldn't have been in this place in the first place. But I gotten away from that nerdy kid. And now I'm on the yard every Friday seeing what's going on. And the studying, and I had already been accepted to dental school. So that last semester, kind of,
Okay, so tell me then. So tell me that. Tell me about what you do now. Tell me about your current career. So let's talk about that.
Oh yeah. So I went on to dental school at Howard, and after Howard, I did my residency in the Navy, practiced dentistry in the Navy for a while, 4 years, and then I moved back to Maryland, where I opened a practice in Waldorf, Maryland. So, and I recently retired from private practice in 2018 because I started teaching part-time, and I loved it so much that I wanted to go ahead and do that full-time. So now I'm doing full-time faculty at Howard Dental School.
Okay, so back to teaching at your HBCU where you got your dental degree. That's fantastic.
Yep.
See? Yep. See, that's that good HBCU education.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, and I think it's important that I point out, because I have not, that you are the current president of the Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia Alumni Chapter of Xavier.
One weekend.
I'm sorry, what does that say? What'd you say?
1 weekend to that.
One weekend.
1 weekend.
Well, congratulations to you, sir. You're doing a wonderful job.
After a whole week.
So happy to have you. So happy to have you. 1 weekend. That's what's up. That's okay. That's okay. So, do you feel like your time at Xavier prepared you for what you encountered in dental school and the Navy, your career, that type thing?
Without a doubt. When, I just told you about my struggle in histology, but when I got to dental school, I had classmates who had not even taken histology. And, I see it now when I work with young kids. They are biology majors and they take things like ecology and environmental science and genomics, and all those things are important to biology. If you're going to get your PhD or go into a special area of biology. But what was so unique about Xavier, if you had that pre-med track, whether you were going pre-dental, pre-veterinary, what have you, they catered that curriculum to meet the curriculum of the school year. So when I got in dental school, I had taken all of these classes. It was, of course, it didn't mirror what we had in dental school because the volume was so great, they went in more detail. But at least I was familiar. And every day when I was at Howard, I compared it to Xavier. I'm like, wow, and then people say, I'm so sick.
Did you find Howard lacking? Were you like,
no.
This is not like Xavier? Don't say it. Don't say
it. Not in terms of academics, but it was just that I saw how rigorous it was in dental school at Howard, but I didn't feel like I couldn't meet the challenge because I've been introduced to the concepts at Xavier.
Right.
So I'm like, my goodness, and then I started, and then at that time when 95, when I graduated, like I said, when I went to Xavier, we were number 2. But by the time I left Xavier, we were number 1 and haven't relinquished that number 1. And I could see.
Say it for the people in the back. You said we're number 1 and what?
Number 1, and we have not relinquished that title. So, and we went to number 1 in 1993. And it's been number 1 in place in African Americans in medical school since then. But what they do not say is also number 1 in dental school, place in dental school. So I'll be glad when that documentation or when that actually starts, because the curriculum is really pretty much the same.
That's fantastic. I did not know that either. Yeah. But let me flip my hair on that one.
Yeah, go ahead and flip your hair.
Get it, Xavier.
Yeah. And even now, teaching at Howard, whenever we get a student who's coming from Xavier, I always say, the faculty to look at me with that side eye, because I'm like, I know they're going to be fair. They're coming from Xavier,
That's right.
But no one ever say you're wrong or why do you say that, because the proof has been in the pudding. And when they come, they make me so proud. They make me so proud because I know the type of education I got at Xavier, and just to see that students are still performing so well who are coming from Xavier makes me so proud. So I've made a great investment.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I love to hear it. Can you tell me in terms of, so I know you were saying you were talking a little bit about your work with kids and stuff like that. So with what you do now and how you're integrated in the community, do you find yourself still giving back? Do you still get involved with the community or with the youth or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
What does that look like for you?
Oh, it's actually, it's more important now than ever. And actually a lot of students from, across the country, because they have social media, Instagram, what have you, they see a lot of posts that I may do with students at Howard or what have you. So now a lot of students who are not at Howard, who are aspiring for medical dental school, they reach out for advice, for help. So I always enjoy that. And then I get a lot of parents, what have you, say, okay, my child wants to go to college, they're looking at Xavier. What can you tell me about it? So, I jump on that like a hungry dog on meat, because I just think in my mind, everybody should go to Xavier in my mind, so
put your money, that's where your money and your heart needs to go.
Absolutely.
That's where your money and your heart needs to go. That's funny though, like a hungry dog on meat. Is this some kind of country saying?
Oh yeah, I have plenty of them.
Like a hungry dog on meat. I'm saying that to you, like, I don't, like, if somebody was listening to me talk, they'd be like, she not from the North. She doesn't sound northern at all. No, I'm not.
At all.
So I was going to ask you then, what's next? What's next for you personally, professionally? Like, where do you see yourself going next?
I'm very open. I enjoy what I do at Howard right now. I'm director of student activities, so I really get an opportunity to work with the students a lot. And for me, some of what I bring to Howard, I get from my experience at Xavier. I keep going back to that because I know how Miss Jasper or Miss Alcorn, for the younger people.
It was Dean Alcorn.
and Dean Bird. I know how much they poured into me and to other students. Like, we actually felt like we were their kids.
Mm-hmm.
They got on us when we did wrong. They congratulated us when we did well. And they taught us the value of being involved in your campus community and in the community in general, as well as staying on top of your academics. And Miss Jasper would give you one of those hugs, and it wasn't one of those, kind of wrap your arms, but you could feel the squeeze.
The church hug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when Dean Bird, if you did something, he would look at you, now Reginald, like, oh Lord, what did I do? And then that was Reginald, then he's getting ready to do something, so you can feel it in that tone. So I bring a lot of that. Try to bring a lot of that to Howard. There's a large, obviously, pool of students in medical and dental at Howard, like at Meharry, and Morehouse is where the larger population of Black students are. But I would not be opposed to going to a PWI, because we need that kind of love and attention I think the students do at those institutions. And they need to be able to, in my mind, see someone who looks like them, honestly.
Yeah.
And who can say, I went through what you're going through now, and I can empathize with some of those social things that may be impacting your academic part of. So I wouldn't be opposed to doing that, but I do want to stay in the academic arena of dentistry.
Okay. And finally, I would ask if you have any words of wisdom or advice to impart to any current or future students of Xavier.
Yeah, I think you're going to get, and again, I stress, I got a great education at Xavier, and I see people who come from Xavier who feel the same way. So you're going to get a good education, I think, wherever you go. But for me, there are things, there are intangibles that you should look for in your education outside of the classroom. Like I said, we were nurtured at Xavier outside of the classroom. We had people that we could turn to or talk to. We had the peer dean staff. I was part of the peer dean, where students would, actually help integrate you, especially for someone who was shy like myself, into that Xavier community. The faculty were outstanding. I mean, you weren't just a student, you were a person. Like, I recently visited New Orleans in March, before this whole COVID thing was really blowing up. And I remember I heard Dr. Privet in the lecture hall talking, and I peeked my head in, and I was like, Dr. Privet, I thought that was you. She knew who I was, and I'm talking about 25 years later. And then, I mean, like, my buddy who was with me, he couldn't believe, like, how does she remember you? Were you that horrible of a student? I was like, no. I was like, I was actually, so those are intangible parts of Xavier that you won't see on the website or in the literature. Mm-hmm. The staff, customer service was there at Xavier. Staff knew that you were the customer. So those are things I would tell students and parents to when you're looking at a university, inquire about those things. Who's actually there in the dorm taking care of my child when they're there? Who's the dorm mother or dorm father? How do they connect with the students? Yeah, those are the things I would say look for.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking out the time. I don't have anything negative to say about Xavier, but I don't. I had the time of my life, and
Okay.
I'm glad to hear that you did too. And I'm looking forward to sharing a portion of you with any of our future current students or alumni who might also get a chance to watch this video and get to know you.
Yeah, be
Thank you
great.
so much for sharing this time with me.
Thank you. XU forever.
And that's it. And we're done.